you might be wasting a resource in Wuthering because these characters are way more important than you think. Now Wuthering is finally celebrating the second anniversary, which is the most awaited things for the Wuthering community, and it will also create kind of like a controversy just like the first one. In the first anniversary they are rerunning the 10 characters at the same time, and people are thinking that the reward that you are trying to give us, which is a 100 plus rewards, which is actually not even enough to get all of those 10 characters at the same time. Especially, yes, not all of those characters are going to be very much viable. You have to choose which characters are going to be best one, but having those 10 characters and also reverse this much of a small, which was kind of like unbalanced, and community was kind of like outrage in that time. But in this current anniversary they did not even rerun just like the previous one, so people are also upset because why they are not even providing the 10 rerun characters which they were providing us into the first anniversary. Anyway, just like the another hypocritical behavior for a gacha community. But most of the important thing is that if you are a new player who really wanted to start this game right now, I guess it is actually very much of a good time. Why am I saying this? Because for a gacha game there is a two times which is a very much of a crucial time to start. First one is a launch time, because in this launch time game always gives you a very much of a reward, and in those reward you can even just reroll with a great character which is currently running in that time. And another time is going to be the anniversary, because if you just somehow cannot even able to start when the game was launched for so many reasons, then second time is going to be your anniversary time. Anniversary time always going to be rewarded just like the launch rewards, but sometimes launch rewards might even make you more rewarded, because in that time most of the games does not even have a good launch. So many things were already happening in that time. When they are fixing that thing, they are going to be compensate the player what they were already at fault. So you have to remember that those things. But anniversary time is actually a good time. But if you are a new player who really waited for this moment because you cannot even start the games when it was launched, I guess it is the best time to start it right now. And another thing is that if you just somehow late to this game, and by the time this video is released and somehow miss the first one banner which is consist of Hyuki, and also the Morny, I guess don't worry, the character will have the rerun very soon, and there are some other more characters that you should even focus right now beside than Hyuki, because Hyuki is not even that of a perfect spot. She needs really required another good support character to fully potential her, but of course the end game are going to be shielding towards her, so you have to be remember that if you just somehow get her, your game is going to be easy mode. Anyway, in this video what I'm going to talk about is that I'm going to give you a little bit of retention and little bit of an idea that which classes characters are you should be focusing on right now, because in this game just like any other gacha RPG game, three classes are involved. First one sub DPS, and also finally our support characters. So in those support and also sub DPS characters, I'm going to rank them which character you should be focusing on as support character, and which character you should be focusing on in a DPS character, as well as which character you should be focusing on a sub DPS classes. So without further ado, let's start. So let's start with the first DPS class. Yes, when it comes to the DPS class, it is tend to be the most power creep reliant, because when a new DPS comes off, the main previous DPS is going to be dethroned by the new DPS. That has been happening not only with the Wuthering, it is also happening with the other gacha game as well as. So DPS are one of those things which most of the people of the community of a certain gacha game does not even recommend players to very much of a invested on, because DPS is a very much of a temporary, but when it comes to the other things which is a support, they are the eternal. But in this case of a Wuthering, I'm really going to suggest you only 5 of one of those like a DPS character. If you just somehow able to get one of them, you are going to have a very much of a easy time on the end game what the Wuthering is providing, especially the 2 end game which is a Tower of Adversity and also Whimpering West. So the first character which is I'm going to talk about is none other than the Frolova. Yes, when it comes to the Frolova, he is actually created the controversy of a Wuthering where you really required a signature weapon to work perfectly for certain characters. In Wuthering we have a 50-50 character pool, and also we have a guaranteed weapon banner. And when it comes to the guaranteed weapon banner, we does really require to pull that on banner. How the Wuthering actually work? In Wuthering there are very much of a limited resource when it comes to providing us a free 4-star weapon and also 5-star weapon. When it comes to the 5-star free weapons, you have to use your standard to pull on a standard banner. Besides, they also provided us a new standard variation of those, like a standard weapon for the Laharoi version, which is a version 3.0. If you somehow able to get one of those weapon, you are good to go. But when it comes to the actual use case of a guaranteed weapon, some of the guaranteed weapon is a very much of a must for a certain characters. If you just somehow cannot even able to use one of those like a signature weapon for that particular character, your character are going to be missed a lot, because that signature weapon is not only provide you a huge amount of value, that signature weapon is a part of that character which it should be there on a base kit of that character. So Frolova was the one or first character which created this kind of method for a Wuthering Waves, and it is also created a kind of like a raft into the community of a Wuthering Waves, where people are saying that Kuro is trying to stole the money from us and also making the game is a predatory. But you already know that how much of a white knight the Wuthering Waves have, and they don't want to talk about the situation anymore. Anyway, that's the thing of a Frolova. But if you just somehow get the Frolova not only going to be benefited for the Tower of Adversity, which is a mix between the AoE characters and also single characters, she can also like outperform in Whimpering West in between those one of those like a top tier new characters. That's how much of a powerful she is. Where in between like she's also like a 7 or 8 months old character, you can consider almost like a 1 year old character. So she is very much of a powerful. But one thing is for sure, having her signature weapon is not going to solve her issue. You have to get another thing, which is her dedicated partner, which is a Cantorola. If you just somehow able to get a Cantorola and also have a build team with Frolova, your team is going to be the busted, and you don't even have to worry about any of those like a meta things or any of those like a shield mode for the end game. You can just totally pierce through anything at all. So that's all for the Frolova. Let's move on to our next character, which is none other than the Karthetia. You can consider our like a previous Sentinel, but after Karthetia there was another Sentinel, which is Amata. I'm going to talk about later on her. But when it comes to the Karthetia, she was like a almost year old character, and when it comes to the actual of a power scaling, she's very much broken, because she was the first character in Wuthering Waves who just totally parked the each and every animation. Even to this day, she totally live up to the animation of other recent characters who also have a very much of a cool and also impactful animations. So aside from the animation, what kind of value she does? She's a total of erosion or gathering control types of base character. So if you just somehow have her with a good amount of investment, you don't need to play with any of those team. You can totally play with her just using a solo character in your team. There's the how much of a powerful that Karthetia can be if you just somehow use her properly. But aside from that, she also does require some kind of like a team member to work full potentially, which is none other than the Chichiona. Yes, Chichiona is one of those character where she's only very much of a viable for the aerial character, and especially for the erosion character, and outside the erosion teams she does not provide any of this value. So she is kind of like a very much of a gated towards your Karthetia, and if you just somehow able to get a Karthetia, she is also going to be the best one. Besides, Karthetia also required same problem as the Frolova, where she really required her signature weapon to work perfectly. Why am I saying this? Because when it comes to the Karthetia is a totally of a damage scaling of a HP. Yes, and when you are going to put a higher amount of HP on her kit, she is going to be deal more damage than ever. So for this higher amount of HP kit or HP scaling damage kit, you have to get her signature weapon, which is the only weapon in this Wuthering Waves case where you cannot even find any of those weapon where you can even get the HP substat bonus. So her signature weapon is the only weapon that you can even get it for this HP stats. So that's the another thing which is very much of a restricted. You have to mind it. Besides, if you just somehow able to use the standard sword weapon, which is a crit rate base, it is also good, but you have to get the her main dedicated partner, which is Chichiona. Another that she's also a very much of a good solid pick, which you can even have it right now. So another character on our list, which is the next character, which is none other than the Agosta. Damn man, when it comes to the Agosta, she is actually very much of a slapful character, because she is the only character in Wuthering Waves who can even have a time stop mechanics, which is very much of a huge helpful. If you just somehow able to use that time stop mechanics in an end game, you can even just totally clutch in a last moment of any of those like end game mode. Suppose if I just give you an example, there was like a minute of a fraction second left to clear a mob, but if you just somehow deploy the Agosta's ultimate in that right moment, your Agosta can totally one shot, or you can say that nuke the boss, and you don't even have to do the retry the whole process all over again. That's how much of powerful. Aside from the her QQ life of a time stop mechanics, she's also very much of a good options, because she does not even require her dedicated partner, which you can even have just to boost up a little damage, which is none other than the and aside from the dedicated partner, she can also perfectly work fine off the FTV option, which is consist of a Agosta and also the Mortifi, and also our most powerful standard character, which is the Varina. This team is still slaps, and aside from that, her signature weapon is also kind of like a mandatory. Why am I saying this? Because her signature weapon can give you a defense, or you can say kind of like a shield on her body, which is actually helpful to proc her passive of her main echo set. That's the main thing what I'm trying to say here, because her echo set can only be enabled if your enabling character does have a kind of like a shield. So if you don't even have a Yono on your team for Agosta, then you don't even have any other character who can even provide this kind of shield. So she have to provide her shield on herself by her signature weapon, which can not only providing your shield but can also kind of like increasing damage and also defense ignore. But that shield can also proc the echo skill, which is the main damage source of her. And if you just somehow don't even proc the her main echo skill, I guess what is the point of totally farming for her main destiny slot artifact. Okay, that's all for the Agosta. Let's move on to our next character, which is none other than the Sigrika. Yes, damn man, she is our like a bait banner before our second anniversary character, and people were kind of like skipping her, but the people who actually really pull her, they were totally blessed by it, because she's not only dominating in the Tower of Adversity, but she's also dominating Whimpering Waves as well. As in a compared to the Frolova, which is almost like a year old unit, she is also totally beats her out of the ground. That's how much of a powerful she is. Besides, she does not even require that much of a dedicated restricted signature weapon compared to our previous character, which I already mentioned before. But you can even just totally use her with the standard weapon, whatever option that you have available on your account. But other than that, she does really require her dedicated partner, which is consist of a Juyuan. Damn man, when it comes to the Juyuan pair up with the Sigrika, damn, she's totally slaps in each and every floors. Besides, you have to do some kind of like a rotation and also kind of like an expert mode and know the proper rotation. Otherwise, you can even just totally do the damage, which you can even just totally get an idea if you just try out 1 or 2 times. That's the main thing of Sigrika. Other than that, she's actually holding value, and I guess she does have a very much a future potential compared to the other characters that I already mentioned before. So our next character, or you can say the final character that you should even have right now, which is our none other than most beloved character, Amath. Damn man, when she was released, she's not only give us one of the best story that Wuthering has ever provided into the history, but also she's kind of like a best nuke damage dealer into this game right now. She's also considered as an exclusive Sentinel character. Sentinel is one of those like a top tier characters in a story lore, which is considered similar level of a HSR Eminator and also Genshin Impact Archon. So they are kind of like a most powerful being compared to the other 5-star characters. So when it comes to the Amath, she is greatly dealing huge amount of damage. She's a nuke damage dealer, and also she does really much of a rely to the break, and also aside from that, she doesn't even require her signature weapon to work perfectly. But if you just somehow give her a signature weapon, she also provide you huge amount of damage boost. But her team is kind of like a very much of a okay, because she does not even have a dedicated partner, just like the other character which I already mentioned in my previous listed. The Jingwan really required signature Sigrika, and also Agosta does not even require, but Karthita required Sichona. But compared to Amath does not even require any of those things. But the character, or you can say the team that Amath is currently using, that team is not only very much of a beneficial for the Amath, that team is also benefited for the other whole over the Wuthering as characters as well as. So she's very much of a FP friendly. If you just somehow able to get her with the H0, you can even just dish out huge amount of damage, because as I already mentioned before in my other videos, and also somehow showcasing her damage to my main accounts, of course I just use her signature weapon, she can totally wipe up to 700k, which is very much of a high damage. Aside from the Amath, you can even totally invest on another character, which is none other than the Hyuki. This is another honorable mention if you just don't want to pull for the Amath, and also one of those characters which I already mentioned before, because those characters are kind of like old, but by the time another character comes off, they are going to be washed off the list. But if you just somehow give another alternate option, I would suggest to pull for the Hyuki, which is a currently ongoing banner, and by the time this video is released, if you just somehow not able to get her, she will get her rerun very soon, so you don't even have to worry that much. Another point is that there is another character which I really want to give you an honorable mention, which is none other than this Zari. Damn man, she's a year-old character, you can say the first anniversary character. She still slaps harder than any of those Sentinel character that you could even ever had. Even according to the Pridento GG side, which is like a most reliable or like a most popular side for the Wuthering S, they just totally leveled her as a tier 1, which is kind of like a strong character, or like a meta character, where meta is totally heavily reliant on these types of character. They are going to be shine, otherwise they are not. But when it comes to Zani, as my practical experience, she still slaps harder than any of those characters. So if you just somehow able to get her, she's also going to be pointed value, but she really required a signature weapon and a dedicated partner, because aside from her dedicated partner, which is a Phoebe, aside from her there is no other character who can even provide you this kind of like a Spectrofragile, which is the main damage source of her whole things. So let's move on to our sub DPS class. In this sub DPS class, it is actually very much spicy because in this sub DPS class there are so many sub DPS characters who are actually very much playing a niche role. If I just give you an example, Chichiona is a only work for the erosion team based, which is consist of a Karthetia and also the Chichiona, and other character which is the Lupa. Lupa is also monofusion teams because her kit is totally revolving around reducing the fusion resistance towards the enemy, where your fusion character deal the more higher amount of damage. And other than which is a Chuyan is also going to be very much of a aerial based character and also provide you the aerial damage types of things only for the Sigdika. Outside for the aerial teams, this guy also does not even hold any kind of value, but there are some other value that you could even find. Other character which is the going to be a good one, which is the Yuno currently running on alongside with the Hyuki as a Rian banner. If you just somehow able to get the Yuno is a kind of like a hot spot where she is a jack of all trades but master of none. Why am I saying this? Because the thing that she provided, which is a shield, buff, heal, but all the things are not even that of a max output potential, just like the other sustain character can even do. So she's totally little bit of something, but not all of these things. That's the main thing that you have to understand. But aside from the other sub DPS character, I would suggest you to pull for Yono. And also the last sub DPS character which I really going to be silently suggest you to pull for, which is none other than the Linai. Man, when it comes to the Linai does only one thing perfectly, which is give you a 44% amount of like all types of damage bonus, and that is kind of damage bonus not only very much restricted towards the team. These damage types of bonus can only work for any of those teams wherever you want to use it. If it is like a Ling Yang, which is you really hate to lose 50 on him, this guy can also be a broken character just by having this Lina on his team. That's how much of powerful Lina is. And also her signature weapon can give you another 23% all types of damage bonus, so totally warp up to 73%. That's how much of powerful it is. So you have to remember that. And the cooldown you don't even have to worry, because if you just somehow know the rotation, how to work properly, you can just really uptime the 73% all types of damage or fucking all the time. Another thing which is the Phoebe and also the Cantarola, these characters does not even hold any kind of value. So all I wanted to say is that just totally don't focus on them, because they are very much very restricted. If you just somehow get those character and also their dedicated partner, dedicated DPS character, then they have a value. Other than that, outside their dedicated partner or dedicated DPS characters, they don't even hold any kind of value. So sub DPS class is kind of like a restricted. If you just want to really invest those two characters, which is the Yono and also Lina, this is very much fine, and they are going to provide huge amount of value for your accounts. Let's move on to our support class, which is also going to be more lower than the sub DPS class, because Wuthering Ace does not provide that much of a support since the game's launch. That's the main thing what I'm trying to say here, because the more powerful support character, or you can say the sustain character they release, which is none other than the Shorekeeper. Shorekeeper was the borderline that you have to have you on your account, because if you don't even have her on your account, you are missing huge amount of value, and most probably you can even just totally complete the end games modes. That's the main thing that you have to understand. But other character which they already released, like a previous year, which is not other than the Chisa, but Chisa is a very much restricted character. If you just somehow able to have Chisa on a certain teams, which is currently only workable on the for the Hyuki, because aside from her negative status there was no character there, but Hyuki is the second character after the Chisa who can also have this kind of like a negative status. Beside Chisa is not even also the best team option for the Hyuki, aside from being another negative status character. So if I just give you a roundup, first of all, pull for the Shorekeeper, and second of all is always go for the Morny. Morny is the best character currently right now, even better than the Shorekeeper. What kind of value she does? So before Morny's value, let me give you a kind of like a brief description what the Shorekeeper value does. Shorekeeper can only give you a good amount of damage, because when her intro or outro buffs comes off, she can gives you kind of like a little bit of animation. That animation can give you almost like a 44k or 23k damage. This is like not like a high damage, but for a sustain character who can provide you heal, crit damage buff, and also other buffs, this is kind of like a good damage, which is actually helps you to clear the end game mode much faster. But for the Morny case, damn man, she provides way too much value compared to the Shorekeeper. The Shorekeeper only value provide is the crit damage, but when it comes to the Morny, she not only provides you all types of damage bonus, which is the same as Lina, she provides you like almost 23%. So if you just somehow able to use her within the team of Lina and also Morny, the total of a team damage bonus, or you can say the all types of damage bonus, will be warp up to 98%, which is almost 100%. That's why these two characters are consist of a wheelchair team for the Wuthering Ace. Any of those DPS character can make shine by having those two characters in this team. So that's how much of a powerful this character does. And Morny does not only provide all types of damage bonus, she can also provide a healing, and also she can provide say one shot resistance, which is another good things, because most of the times your character can even just totally get a huge amount of higher amount of blow from the enemy, and if you just somehow cannot even dodge the proper time, then that time this character Morny can helps you to survive that powerful attack. Another part of it, she also provide you a resistance, or you can say the interaction resistance, which is actually helpful for most of the characters, because most of the characters when they are dealing the damage or basic attacks, if the enemy give them a good amount of punch, and if you cannot even dodge properly, you can even totally stagnate it and just totally throw away from miles away, which takes a lots of time and also waste a lots of time to clear the endgame mode within a time. That's the thing of a Morny. And let's another character which you can even have on a standard banner, and people are considering these character are one of the best standard character that you can even have ever pick on, which is the Varina. Yes, Varina is a very much of a crucial role. She can also have like a one shot resistance, but her one shot resistance is kind of like a old version. How is it work? Because if you just somehow get a huge amount of good blow from the enemy, then your character won't even die. Your character will just totally survive by the 1 HP and also have like a little bit shit to make up to the time where your healer can totally heal the whole team members. For the final phase, pull for standard character which is a Varina, and also pull for these two character which is a Morny and also the Shortkeeper. Other than that, I am not seeing any of this value, because Wuthering is very much of a allergic to release a sustain character for a very long time. I guess I already give you a brief discussion that what kind of character that you should be even focusing on right now, and there is no kind of like honorable mention for the support characters, because support character is very much of a low compared to the other sub DPS and also DPS character, and also sub DPS classes are almost provided what the support characters are dedicated to. So it is kind of like a mix between it. And aside from that, if you have any kind of question regarding this my list of what kind of character you should be pulling for if you are a new player, you can even totally comment on my comment section and let your thought know that what you are thinking about it. And that's all for this video. See you on the next video. Peace.